is what sets him apart. The bloodletting and dissection of Brandes would lead me to place Mives at level 14, but because the motivation of his crime is not to torture and mutilate his victim, and the fact that he sedated Brandes before killing to avoid inflicting pain, I place him lower on the scale. For these reasons, I would classify Armin Mives at level 7, highly egocentric murderers who killed for narcissistic reasons.
What are the roots of Armin Mives's desire to consume human flesh? Mives tells a courtroom that the impulse to eat another human being dates back to being abandoned by his father and brothers as a child. Is it possible that memories of traumatic events can be an ingredient in the twisted crimes of killers like Armin Meiwes? Science is now exploring the impact emotionally charged memories have on the brain. How can certain memories become more ingrained in the brain than others?
Although we do know that memories are very difficult to localize in the brain, it's something that has been sort of the holy grail of memory research.
Dr. Krista McIntyre of the School of Behavioral and Brain Science at the University of Texas at Dallas is trying to unlock the impact of memories on brain and social development.
I study the neurobiology of learning and memory, and I particularly focus on the consolidation of memories that are considered emotionally arousing.
In order to unravel the mysteries of the human brain, Dr. McIntyre starts with an animal brain. By examining the learned responses of rats, Dr. McIntyre hopes to answer questions about the origins of memory and the longevity and power of emotionally charged memories.
Take a rat and place the rat in the light compartment of a two-compartment alleyway. So one compartment has a very bright light above it, and the other compartment is dark. And rats are nocturnal, and they tend to prefer the dark, so they'll enter the dark compartment fairly quickly, and we block them in there.
Inside the dark end of the alley, Dr. McIntyre stimulates the first group of rats with a mild electric shock. A second group of rats is also allowed to enter the dark section, but given no electric stimulation at all.
We take some animals, we put them in the light compartment, we allow them to enter the dark compartment, and they reach the end of the dark compartment and turn around, and then we just wait 10 seconds and return them to their home cage without giving them a foot shock.
After the initial test, both groups of rats are returned to the alley. Those that received no electrical stimulation quickly enter the dark. But the other group shows a very different result.
After the rat received a foot shock, we returned the rat to the light compartment, and we saw that he didn't enter the dark compartment. We saw that during the training, the rat entered the dark compartment fairly quickly after only a few seconds. But after the training, when we put the rat in the light compartment, he spent many minutes, and probably if we'd left him there would spend up to 10 minutes in the light compartment. So from that we infer that the rat has some memory of the unpleasant experience that he had in the dark compartment. So this change in behavior that we see as a result of experience is what we consider memory.
Dr. McIntyre's results seem to suggest that the rat assigns the darkness an unpleasant memory and alters its normal behavior. In this case, the mind of a rodent is similar to the mind of the human. Pinpointing how and why a traumatic experience impacts the brain in humans may lead to one day isolating and treating these memories.
There are many people who are suffering from intrusive memories that are so strong that they're haunting and debilitating. So ultimately we hope that this research will help us to better understand what's going wrong when memories are stored and they're too powerful and too intrusive.
If emotionally intense memories can have a prolonged impact on normal, healthy people, what might they do to those who show signs of aggressive behavior or psychopathy? For Andrei Chikatilo, negative memories may have been part of the fuel that fired a psychotic mind. Soviet Union, 1940s. Andrei Chikatilo's parents tell him that an older brother has been murdered and cannibalized during a famine. Chikatilo begins fantasizing about killing and eating people. His fantasies of consuming human flesh continue into adulthood. He finally succumbs to his desire. From 1978 to 1990, Chikatilo murders, mutilates, and in some cases cannibalizes 52 women and children. It is considered the most brutal crime spree in Soviet history. On February 15, 1994, Chikatilo is executed for his crimes. For the sheer volume of his atrocities and the brutality with which they were committed, Dr. Stone places Andrei Chikatilo at number 22, the highest number on his scale. A troubling childhood memory, mental illness. These are some of the ingredients which may have driven Andrei Chikatilo to murder and consume his victims. But the triggers of all cannibals are not as clear-cut. Experts wonder what drove Jeffrey Dahmer, America's most notorious cannibal. Does his murderous spree have roots in the dissolution of his family? Are memories of profound loneliness part of what drive him to kill? Milwaukee, 1978. At age 17, Dahmer's parents engage in a bitter divorce. Dahmer is left to live at home alone. Later that year, Dahmer picks up a hitchhiker and murders him. "I didn't want him to leave," he later explains. From 1978 to 1991, Dahmer's spree continues. He rapes, murders, and eats at least 15 men and boys. In some cases, he stores their remains in his refrigerator. By 1991, it is estimated that he is killing one person a week. It is not until one of his intended victims is able to escape that police discover the gruesome scene at Dahmer's apartment. Investigators uncover human remains, severed heads, and bodies decomposing in containers of acid. His total number of victims is unknown. Dahmer is sentenced to 937 years behind bars. After 2 years in prison, Dahmer is murdered by a fellow inmate. Dr. Stone reserves the highest place on his scale for Jeffrey Dahmer, for his elaborate and vicious acts of torture, rape, and murder. Like Andrei Chikatilo, Jeffrey Dahmer receives a 22 on Dr. Stone's scale. Sacramento, 1978. A pregnant woman is savagely murdered in her home. Blood is drained from her body. 1 month later, 3 more people are discovered in a small home. Again, the bodies have been drained of blood. In some cases, organs are missing.
There were so many murders in this case. They were so violent and gruesome.
Police quickly pin the crimes on 27-year-old Richard Chase. He confesses to the crimes and tells investigators he had to do it. He believes he must drink the blood of others or he will die. His motive for murder? To quench a delusional thirst for blood.
To the general public, the actions of Richard Chase look like those of a madman. But in his delusional state, he has convinced himself that murder and consuming blood are a very matter of survival. To understand how he becomes so intertwined with his delusion, I must explore his past.
May 23, 1950. Richard Chase is born into an unhappy home in a middle-class neighborhood of Sacramento. His father is a disciplinarian, and his mother suffers from delusions. She accuses her husband of infidelity and spends hours crying. Both parents take their frustrations out on a young Richard. Chase's mother forces him to eat until he becomes violently ill. Richard begins acting out. He starts torturing and mutilating animals. He dismembers their bodies and buries the remains in the backyard.